Forget all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight black mass.
Ghastly greetings, groovy ghoulies. It's been a long time, but we are back on the Midnight Black Mass here on the Potty Humor Network and BeyondRingside.com. I am your host, the maniacal minister of the occult, the Reverend Dan Wilson, alongside my partner in crime and the star of the most recent episode of Botchamania, Andrew Alexander. How's it going, man?
Man, it's going. Yeah, I woke up to that. That's pretty entertaining. Luckily, it wasn't my fault, the botch, but I got news for them, man. I could send them some much worse shit than that, especially from the old NWA Anarchy days and definitely before that. But, I mean, I'm not going to do that, but I could.
Well, it's funny. A lot of the boys, you know, sometimes will get mad if they end up on Botchamania, but, like, I think it's just hilarious, and it's like you have to have a sense of humor about that shit. Sometimes shit just don't go according to plan, and, you know, everybody has those moments. Like, I mean, Kyle Matthews, one of the best wrestlers in the world, and very few people would dispute that, including, you know, his trainer, the late, great Ted Allen, their protege, or his mentor, anyway. And so, you know, it's like, clearly Chip Day is becoming a great independent name. So there's a lot of guys that were on there, even major stars even. Everybody messes up, but when you catch it, like, you have to be able to laugh at yourself, and I found it pretty hilarious. It was like super old footage of you too, so, you know, it was before you really became a great worker. You were a good worker then, I thought, but you didn't become a great worker until after that.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, I think it's hilarious. I was like, as somebody posted on Facebook and tagged me, and I said, why am I? I like those. I don't make it a point to watch them, but I have watched them before and I enjoy them. I'm like, man, there must be something I need to see. And then I'm like, whoa, I made it.
Finally,
now
after all these years, I made it.
Yeah. Now if I can just get on Trash Bag Wrestlers.
Well, all you have to do to get on Trash Bag Wrestlers is do a run-in in street clothes, because apparently that's not allowed, according to them. So I've heard. Anyway, so during the hiatus, I had to take some time off because those assholes in the White Rose kicked the hell out of me. And unfortunately, I mean, it was a blessing in disguise. I had some dental stuff that I needed to get done anyway, and they just kind of finished the job. So I ended up having some pretty major oral surgery and all, and, you know, couldn't talk for a few days, but I'm back at it. So I guess they were upset at some of the things I'd said about them here on the program and elsewhere. So if they're listeners, I'm just going to tell them to listen up, because later on I got some words for them. Also want to address my official status with Empire Wrestling real quick. After that, you know, I love you, man. You know, I love the management and everybody there. But as far as that goes, that's not what I signed up for as an announcer, as an authority figure. And, you know, I had to part ways and turn in my notice as an announcer and executive backstage player at Empire Wrestling, unfortunately. So very sad to hear that as we're going into the last ride of Tooth and Nail 5, but I felt like it was inevitable. I'm not the young man I used to be. I still like to get out there and mix it up from time to time, but when people are trying to literally end my career, you know, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, and I can't. I've apologized a million times because I feel 100% responsible for what they did. I've beat myself up over it for several weeks now. Uh, but in 6 days, we're laying this down on Sunday afternoon. 6 days, tooth and nail 5, and I just can't. I know we're on a podcast, and I know that I need to verbalize and paint the picture, but there's nothing I can say to describe the things that I attempt to do to that boy Ryan Vega at Tooth and Nail 5. So if you're out there listening and you wanna see this, you're gonna have to come to 22 Austin Avenue, Rossville, Georgia, and buy a ticket and watch. And I promise you won't be disappointed, because the time for talking is long past due. And in 6 days, man, I'm going to beat the hell out of that boy.
Well, that's something that's often missing in professional wrestling in 2016 is an issue that people believe in. And it doesn't get any more black and white than this. This isn't about fancy moves. This isn't about doing the most impressive high spots or having a 5-star match. This is old school, mud, blood, and a beer. Two guys that absolutely hate each other. And it's going to be settled one way or the other. And if I'm a betting man, I'm betting on you, brother.
Well, I think that's a safe bet at this point, because I will not stop. They will absolutely have to kill me to get me to stop. And as we'll go into later, apparently that could be on the agenda, because they damn near attempted that last night.
Yeah, at the end of the program, we've got a huge tooth and nail rundown, and we're going to have some exclusive words. Let's just say, even though I've turned in my notice at Empire, I got one last promo in the tank for my man, Andrew Alexander, and I'm going to lay it down for you later, and with a whole lot more of information about Tooth and Nail 5 coming up here in just a week's time now. Less than 22 Austin Avenue, Empire Arena, Rossville, Georgia. The last hurrah for Empire Wrestling at the arena before a break and some expansion efforts. So stay tuned. We got a whole lot more of that. But what the fuck have you been up to during the break? I know idle hands are the devil's dingling, so hopefully you didn't get into too much trouble.
Again, man, I know that it doesn't make for the most exciting podcast, but ever since back in late November, early part of December, when the White Rose, attacked me, knocked out 3 of my teeth. I had to have my jaw wired shut for several weeks over the holidays. Celebrated my birthday with my jaw wired shut. I have not done anything. I've been so furious, so angry, so focused on these little pricks, but especially Ryan Vega. And then coming back into the fold as being the matchmaker at Empire, I've been focused 100% on that. And then when you take into account that Tooth and Nail 5 coming up and it being our last show, I've been focused on trying to put together the absolute best show that we can have. And I mean, not just saying this, Tooth and Nail 5 could be our best show, top to bottom, that we've ever had. So we're going to go out in a blaze of glory. But I've not done nothing. I've eat, slept, breathed, drank, bled, a mixture of Empire Wrestling, Tooth and Nail 5, and Ryan Vega.
Well, hell, I mean, I can't say as I blame you. You got to get in that mindset, and for you, you've been out of the ring for a while, so I know you've been training to get in fighting shape, and that's really been the only thing on your mind. So, I will corroborate his story, folks, because in my dealings with my boy here, that's all he's had to say. But I tried to get out of the house and get my mind off of shit, because you know me, if I sit here and stew on things, bad things will happen. So I had to just try to let it go. Had to try to get out. My wife's friend is a cheerleader for the Mocs, UTC Mocs, our local college sports team. And so they invited her and all the chicks she works with and their husbands, etc., to come out to the Mock's playoff basketball game. And, I'm not really a big sports guy. I followed sports a lot when I was like a kid and a teenager. But as I grow older and my brain started taking in new information, it just wasn't something that I cared to keep around. I don't mind getting together with the guys and having a beer and watching a game, but it's not something I follow. So I didn't really know what to expect going into this. I was just a few days post-op, so I couldn't really talk. But I was quite entertained, actually. It was a pretty good time at the old UTC Roundhouse, and to watch our local team win a playoff game and go into the big NCAA tournament. But the entertainment were the cheerleading and dancing squads. Of course, the Mox cheerleaders did a great job. They had their own, dancing team of skinny little white girls called the Sugar Mox, who would come out and do a little dance routine at halftime and stuff. But the people who stole the show, absolutely stole the show, all eyes on them, were the Mock Marching Band Elite Guard. And it was several young ladies of the darker skin persuasion. And anytime the Mox would score, the band would play a little ditty, and they would get up. And I'm telling you, shake that ass. I mean, it was raunchy dancing for a fucking family event. But we were just over here rolling, we just couldn't believe it was going on. And of course, they're playing your standard marching band shit that you hear at a game, like Gary Glitter, Rock and Roll Part 2, etc. And then they bust out some motherfucking I Got 5 on It by Lunis. And they're just fucking breaking it down. And it was the damnedest thing I'd ever seen. And it made that evening so much more entertaining than I expected.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I would be all about checking that out. I mean, especially with some shaking ass, because I'm a big fan of that, especially young athletic college girls.
I know your affinity for the brown sugar, so I feel like you could be the first ever ring rat for the Chattanooga Mox Elite Guard.
Oh, I'd be the biggest whore they've ever seen in their life.
And I have to wonder, how experienced is one Gunnar Miller? Since he was the big man on campus there for many years, he has to know about the Mock Elite Guard. We might have to have him on the show to ask about him.
Dude, he's never confirmed or denied, really, but I know that motherfucker was slaying bitches so much. There's no doubt in my mind that he didn't fuck every girl. He probably got laid so much that he was probably getting offers from, maybe not 10s, maybe 8s or 9s. And he's I can't do that. I can't do it. He's swatting away 8s and 9s and fucking all these 10s. Motherfucker should be named O.J. Simpson. He's such a lady killer. I know it.
It's the opposite of George Carlin. I never fucked a 10, but I fucked 5 2s.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. But that was just something, because it was like the devil or an alien shaking hands with the president, seeing me at a sporting event, so I had to report on it. So, but moving along, let's talk about some grappling. Of course, we always start off, if we've had any of our colleagues or cohorts pass away, we always kick it off with that when we get to this section. And unfortunately, while we haven't had many to report over the last few episodes, we do have 2 in the passing time since we've been recording. One, Eiji Izaki, better known as Japanese legend of hardcore and high-flying wrestling, Hayabusa, passed away due to a brain hemorrhage at the age of 47. One of the most inspirational stories in wrestling. He was paralyzed in 2001 from an Asai moonsault gone awry. He recently walked again and has become an advocate to the young wrestlers to not take unnecessary risks. And so right until he died, he was explaining that he was one of the greatest innovators of the 1990s, one of the biggest daredevils. Many people called him the Japanese Sabu. And he learned that the risks he took ultimately ended up costing him his career and possibly his life. I don't know if the brain hemorrhage was related to his previous injuries or if it was just a freak thing, but still very sad. And that guy, I remember as a teenager, he just captured my imagination so much.
Yeah, I kind of watched a little bit as a teenager. I really didn't keep up with him, growing older, and after I really got into the wrestling business. But I think it's definitely sad. But I think just looking back at when he was paralyzed, that should have served as just such a message for younger guys or any guys really, because okay, you have this guy that is a master of these high flying maneuvers. He's a master at them, and he did a simple moonsault and ended up paralyzed. Like that's Hayabusa. So if you're Joe Blow in the middle of nowhere in fucking Alabama and you're cutting these moonsaults, like, do you think the results are always going to be positive? Because these things happen. So I mean, I think people should have carried that away. But 47 years old, man, that's pretty young to not be with us anymore for sure.
Yeah, very sad to report that one, and thoughts and condolences to his friends and family, of course. And then the other that we lost was a legend of the AWA days. Many people remember him as a various times commissioner and announcer, troubleshooting referee for the American Wrestling Alliance. He was also the figurehead president of the Pacific Wrestling Federation in Hawaii. And also, he would be often brought in to read the proclamations before Triple Crown matches in All Japan Pro Wrestling. I'm talking about Mr. Tally-Ho himself, Lord James Blears. He made his career playing a snooty British pro wrestler originally, and of course, he later evolved into the non-wrestling roles that I mentioned. But the really unique thing about him, he was captured during World War II, and he was the subject of many press stories later in his life regarding this. But he was working as a British radio officer, and apparently his ship got hit by a torpedo and it sunk. And even the enemy combatants even beheaded one of his colleagues in front of him. And so he was held, and he ended up surviving on canned peaches. I often wonder if that episode of The Simpsons where Mr. Skinner falls under the newspaper and has to survive on canned peach preserves after reading this might have been a reference to Lord James Blears. So a man of a totally different generation. I never saw him as a wrestler, but I did see him a lot as a commentator and a figurehead in the AWA. And by all accounts, just a gentleman and a kind. He responded to every piece of fan mail. He was just apparently an all-around class act. So rest in peace, Lord James Blears.
Yeah, I never knew that story. That's very interesting, for sure. It sounded like he lived a full life. Yeah, I never saw him as a wrestler either. Barely saw him in other things, just really in clips and things like that. But I got a feeling, go back and watching him in the ring, I'm sure he was awesome, because pretty much anybody that came from that era was really good, especially if you're looking for some different stuff, not a lot of people would watch that style and maybe even say boring and something like that. And I see why someone would say that if you're not just in love with the business, in love with the history and things like that. But you can't deny that whole generation with the storytelling and making pro wrestling more of a legitimate, real sport. I mean, you can't deny that that's what these guys were doing. But I'm sure he was a hell of a talent in ring.
Yeah, I would almost bet on it. So throw the 10 bells up to those guys and keep their families in your thoughts as they pass on to the great beyond, leaving us with a few less legends yet again. So moving along to talking about world-class gentlemen, to a full-fledged media circus. Have you been keeping up with the Hulk Hogan and Gawker trial in the news?
No, I've purposely not. I've seen little things. I've seen Linda Hogan running that mouth, and I know Hogan can sometimes be very full of it, but I'm not clicking any links. I'm like, fuck it, I don't care.
Well, I'm about to tell you something, because there's been some quite perverse entertainment out of this whole thing. I grew up loving Hulk Hogan as a kid, but it's no doubt that he and the Truth are not exactly the best of friends. And so some of the ridiculous claims that have come out of this.
Hey, wait one second. I'm sorry. He and the Truth aren't the best friends. You mean Ron the Truth Killings, WWE superstar? Because I can understand why they wouldn't get along.
No, but that's probably not inaccurate. So, first of all, he claims that he didn't know the finish at WrestleMania 3, that he wasn't sure Andre was going to go for it. And so, he's like trying to work the jury under oath. He is one of the only people in history to get an injunction by a judge to be allowed to wear a do-rag in court because fucking he's Hulk Hogan. I saw a thread online. Somebody was like, "Oh, you can wear do-rags in federal court now?" And somebody responded, "You can't. Hulk Hogan can."
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Oh, there's more. There's more. And then, of course, they've got, like, the interviews and cross-examination. They're just going through evidence with a fine-tooth comb. Anything that he said as a guest while he was on the Bubba the Love Sponge show. So one of the claims that he allegedly made on the Bubba the Love Sponge show was that he had a 10-inch penis. And then, of course, since there was video evidence of that, when questioned by the attorneys, he said, "Oh no, I never said that. My penis is not that big. I said Hulk Hogan has a 10-inch penis."
Well, in that case, Andrew Alexander's got a 12-inch penis.
Every podcast that joke has come up on, that has been the response. And I guarantee you've not listened to any of them, which makes it that much more hilarious.
Yeah, no, I have not. So, well, it's so easy.
It is. It's just right there. And then the interviews with Linda have been almost equally perverse. She's now accusing Hogan of being a closeted homosexual, as if in 2016 anybody would care, but apparently in Hulk Hogan's world, that's a big deal. So she says that allegedly one time her mother walked in on a large blonde man filleting Ed, the Brutus the Barber Beefcake, Leslie. And it looked to be Terry from the behind. Though I think that may just be mudslinging at this point. Still, just like I said, it's a total fucking circus. And the entertainment just keeps coming.
Well, I call total bullshit on that, because there's no way in fuck that Hogan is blowing Beefcake.
That's right. That was my first thought.
Like, if you said I saw Brutus Beefcake blowing Hogan, I'd say, okay, what other news do you have? Like, I don't doubt that for a second, but there's no way the Hulkster was going down on a barber. It wasn't happening.
No. So, I'm for the Hulkster. I think that people should have a right to privacy. If you don't want your shit getting out there, then you got the right to have it taken down. So that's what he's trying to do, is he's suing them over that because they didn't have, his permission to publish his sex tape, and all of that shit happened. So, hopefully he'll win, because if not, like, the precedents being set by the other attorneys is like basically saying, well, if you're famous, then your sex tape's basically public domain. And that's a pretty dangerous precedent to set. So hopefully the Hulkster can pull it out despite all the ridiculousness.
I don't understand, man. I don't get that at all. Like, these celebrity sex tapes come out, and I definitely believe that some of them could be leaked and some of them could be put out for publicity and things like that. Because, I mean, hell, we've seen careers basically made because a sex tape comes out. But how can someone steal a sex tape and put it out, and everybody's just like, well, that's okay. You made a sex tape, so now anyone can watch it. Like, if I make a sex tape and someone puts it out, I've just got to be like, well, there's my penis. There's me fucking. There's me doing sick, disgusting things that would make you question, like, what the fuck is wrong with Andrew? Like, like now, like revenge porn has become a thing, and trust me, I've been on the fence for many, many, many months about just ruining all sorts of lives. But if you go out there and post pictures or videos of an ex-girlfriend or an ex-fuck buddy or what have you, you can get in trouble for that. You can get criminal charges and all of these things. So I can't post a picture of some bitch's tits and like say it's her, but if I'm a celebrity, I can be eating some bitch's ass, like camera zoomed in on my face, and that's completely legal to put out, to steal, to put out for the world and make profit from. This system is just so fucking fucked up.
Yeah, and that's why Hogan really needs to win this, because if he doesn't, then that's the precedent that's set, and that's a bad, bad thing, in my personal opinion.
And Hogan's defense on the first thing you stated about not knowing the finish of WrestleMania 3, I've heard him say that a few times, and I totally believe that because, I mean, I know he probably knew what the finish should have been, but if any second Andre was like, no, fuck this, history would have been a lot different, because there's nothing Hogan could have done if Andre was like, I'm going to win.
Very true. Very true. And I think it was more the phrasing, because I've heard him say that as well previously, but like the exact quote is like he didn't know what the finish was. It was a little more silly than what he said before. As Hogan does over time, he tends to exaggerate and the lies get bigger, and Andre goes from a 400 to a 600 to an 800 to a 1,200 pound giant.
Yeah, that's Hogan. He's the consummate worker.
That he is. Well, speaking of Hogan and a show he will not be on, Wrestlemania coming up here in just a few weeks, and the buzz is starting to grow around it. It's certainly not as stacked of a card as they've had in recent years, but they've also had a lot of injuries, so, understand they're trying to vamp, and it's probably a good opportunity for them to make some new stars here. Will they pull the trigger on that? Not sure, but I would definitely like to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's definitely not the most stacked card, not the most intriguing of situations all around. I mean, it is still more exciting. It is WrestleMania season. You're curious to see what the card will be and things such as that. So it is the best time of year, really, to be a wrestling fan. And they seem to just try harder. They just try a lot harder. They're doing some things like with Triple H busted Roman Reigns face up, and they used blood capsules. Big deal. At least they did. They tried something to get a little more legitimate heat, and put Roman Reigns a little more behind the 8 ball, and use blood and things like that. Because I'm not an advocate for just blood for the sake of blood. Because like in the Attitude Era in the early 2000s, that was kind of the case. And in TNA wrestling, I thought that was the case for a long time, where it's like, Jesus, there's color every week. It doesn't matter. But there's times where you just need to see the color. So at least they're trying that. And I know there's a lot of controversy or people talking and saying that Undertaker and Shane McMahon is a poor choice, and they're building it. I think they're building it as well as they can. And there's rumors now that it may actually close the show. But, I mean, it is the WWE's fault that they do not have stars built up enough and in place to face someone like The Undertaker at WrestleMania. But that's the universe, get it, that we're living in. So you have to go with what you have. So them pulling the rabbit out of their hat and getting Shane back and building it up the way they have and stuff, they've done a pretty damn good job with what they have.
I have no doubt that Shane and Undertaker will be a great match. I mean, Shane always delivers the goods when he wrestles, and he always has. He's a lot older now, but, he doesn't have to go back on the road, so he's always willing to take some crazy risk. There's other sides of that argue that he makes the boys look bad by doing that because, he only shows up every now and again and does something crazy and gets over huge, but he doesn't have to go and work 5 nights a week for the next week to protect his body so he can do that. But regardless, they got to do what they got to do to sell them tickets, and not that they're not going to sell like WrestleMania in-house, of course, is always sold out in advance. But as far as those WWE Network buys and subscriptions, they definitely going to put out what they think is going to gauge the most interest, and people are excited for it. Say what you want about Shane McMahon, he got a huge reaction, and people are really with him. So should be interesting to see. Roman Reigns, I'm a huge fan of that guy, but I just don't see now that I don't think that fan base is ever going to accept him at the current course. Just as a booker, and I know they don't really lean on any old school wrestling philosophies. They tend to think that stuff is outdated and antiquated, but boy, howdy, it would seem to me it would be quite beneficial to do a heel turn with him, a la The Rock, because, you know, the people really don't seem to want to get behind someone anymore unless they've got a little bit of an edge first. So if your idea is to build him as your franchise babyface, I would flip him, and that way he can respond to the heat he's getting now, and then eventually they're going to come back around to him.
Yeah, I agree. I actually agree with that pretty much 100%. I think Roman Reigns is a hell of a talent. I think he's delivered. I don't think he's particularly done many things wrong at all. I think it's been the way he's been used and the way he's been booked, and not necessarily shoved down people's throats, but it's just some of the calls they made. I mean, the most recent at the Royal Rumble. I watched it live, and when I watched it, and they had the League of Nations put him through tables and things like that, so I thought, okay, he's going to be stretchered out, and come back later. I knew that was going to happen, that he would come back. But two things: one, you already have this fan base that isn't buying him, and he hasn't established the work ethic, which is, I mean, it's important today. It just is. Fans are smarter. Fans are reading the internet. Fans are feeling more inside, and the WWE is letting fans more inside. So when you have this guy who's not proven himself, okay, if they did that with a Ric Flair, with a John Cena, with a Randy Orton, with a Shawn Michaels, with a Taker, Triple H, people know, well, that guy can go an hour. He doesn't. He's just not having to. But when it looks like you're giving Roman Reigns a 20-minute break because he needs a 20-minute break, that's bad. And also, he didn't get stretchered out. They start to carry him to the back, and then the camera cuts to him, and he's walking on his own accord to the locker room. It didn't take me 2 seconds when watching it live to go, what the fuck is he doing? Walk the other way to the ring and fight for your championship. Like, that's a case where it should have never even been presented to begin with, to be honest, but he should have stood up and said, hey guys, that's not the way to do this. I'm not doing that. You can stretcher me out, and then I'll come back. But he walks away from the fight.
Yeah, just total babyface burial one-on-one. I mean, there's theories out there that they're trying, like there's people behind the scenes that are trying to bury him on purpose. With the knowledge and the money that they have, I'm not a giant wrestling conspiracy theorist or anything, having worked in the business for so long, but there might be something to that.
I don't know if I can believe that, because it just seems so stupid. And it doesn't make sense, because he's a hell of a talent, and from what I hear, a good guy. You know, I never hear people really saying a lot bad about him. Like, he's a nice guy. He's humble. He's respectful. He's working well in the ring. He's doing things the right way, or at least as much as you can these days. And I think at this point, two things are happening. There's two people in this situation. There's the office, and they're being stubborn and by saying, this is our guy, you're going to like him, like Cena. Like, Cena didn't take off, and there's still a large part of the crowd. And I think a lot of it now is like a game. Like, oh, we'll boo Cena even though they don't believe it. Because if Cena hasn't earned your respect as a wrestling fan, you're not a wrestling fan. You're an idiot. Because that guy's a hard-working motherfucker. But I think,
in all class, like, he represents the business as good as anybody has in the last 20 years, you know. And he's out there doing public appearances and stuff. And everybody knows he's a wrestler. He's a very popular wrestler. Women and children love him. He's a great human being. He does all these Make-A-Wish deals. Or when we worked there on that extra spot, he didn't have to take any time to acknowledge us jabronis standing over here in the corner in the black T-shirts. But what does he do? He comes over and he introduces himself to each and every one of us because he's a fucking class act.
He sure did. I was kind of blown away by that, really. But I think the office is being stubborn in that way, and at the same time, I think the fans are kind of being stubborn. I think they're so dead set that even when Roman Reigns is performing well and putting on a good match, a good show, working hard, they're booing him just for the sake of booing him, just to say we don't want this. And I think at this point, it really is a situation with The Rock where you turn him heel and get him to where people hate him. And when people hate him so much, they will beg to love him. And then you turn him back. I have no doubt that this guy can be a face of the company for a decade plus, but it's just not working right now. And I think if they go on last, him and Triple H, that might be a bad situation for your show and for your crowd and presentation. And you're in this, 100,000 people. You've got a tycoon like a Jerry Jones that's going to be there watching, and it seems like it would put an egg on Vince's face for this other billionaire to be like, "Oh, so this is your guy, and your people hate him, and what kind of show are you running here?"
I mean, I'd do the double turn. I'd have Vince fuck Triple H, because they're going to be cheering him anyway. And
I do something. They need to change stuff up, and I think that's one thing that's been exciting about Shane McMahon coming back, and just the mentions of getting rid of the authority and doing something new. I want that to happen. I want the brand split to come back. I think that was much better for the product, and especially when you have such a big roster. And it makes things interesting when you have the big shows. You do some inter brand matches, a Raw versus SmackDown guy. It's interesting, and you can get behind it, and you understand it. But I do not want Shane McMahon to get a win over The Undertaker at WrestleMania to make this happen.
yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, Taker's going to do whatever they ask. I mean, he ended the streak on a whim, which is unheard of, but he's the ultimate general and company man, so he's going to set the example. And enough of our armchair booking. Like, I'm going to sit and enjoy WrestleMania like a fan, like I always do, and I'll privately bitch about what I don't like and talk about what I do like, because that's usually what I look for in wrestling more. I try to just sit back and enjoy it if I'm going to watch it. And, if something's really terrible, of course it'll stick out. But otherwise, I try not. I don't have any skin in the game. So, I'm just happy for my compadres to get that big payday and get in front of that big audience. And it's like the wrestling holiday of the year every year. So it's just like, if nothing else, it's just a day to celebrate wrestling.
That's the ultimate, the end result of the equation. Bitch about it, love it, like it, hate it, you're going to watch it. So
Yep.
they're going to get your money at least on that night. So I mean, now at this point, it could be Roman Reigns farting on a snare drum, and people's going to be tuned in. So I mean, you gotta go with them there. And what about the night before WrestleMania? I love that just as much as WrestleMania each year, the Hall of Fame.
Oh, sometimes I love it more, because that is really where you see the ultimate celebration of the history of the business. And this year, they've got a pretty damn good class. There's some that are, sort of mid-card folks, but, I mean, overall, they're some of my favorites here. I mean, first of all, the fabulous Freebirds, long overdue, but in Dallas, Texas, the appropriate place for them to finally go in the Hall of Fame. Of course, I'm not sure why Jimmy Garvin gets the nod, but I'm sure if you're inducting the whole group, I mean, does that mean Big Daddy Dink and Little Richard and like the Rocky King and all the various entourage members get in too, or what?
Well, that's the thing. I've heard that Michael Hayes really pushed for that, and I agree with the decision. I am a big fan of the Jimmy Garvin, Michael Hayes era of Freebirds. I really enjoyed them. I don't know. I haven't studied as much of the original three. I know they did amazing things, and everything I've seen I've loved. But if you ask me which do I prefer Jimmy Garvin and Michael Hayes. Just because it was they did the glam rock thing, which I'm a big fan of. Jimmy Garvin was a hell of a worker, hell of a talent. So I just really enjoyed watching those guys. But I'm glad that's happening. But you are opening it up like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, we'll induct 30 members of Chicago, but we're only going to induct the original 4 members of Kiss. So when they do the NWO, are you going to have the original 3, or is Stevie Ray going to be slipping in there? so, so like it's
what about Horace? Damn it,
Horace Hogan. I mean, so you gotta be careful with that stuff, and you're gonna have people raise questions about what about this guy, what about that guy. I mean, like when they did the Horsemen, they obviously didn't do the original 4, which I don't know if that'll ever happen with Ole. Maybe after he passes, but even then, I kind of doubt. But there were other great horsemen besides Barry Windham. I mean, there were nice additions over time. Um, but yeah, you got to be careful with stuff like that. But I, for one, I'm glad that Jimmy Garvin is going in as well. And I haven't heard that if he'll be there to speak, but I've heard that our buddy Ray Gordy is supposed to accept on behalf of his dad, and I know Michael Hayes will be leading the charge. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. Another one, I mean, we'll go over the class quickly. I'm really excited about the Big Boss Man. I think he's been one that's been long overdue. And when I say long overdue, I know people's like, well, how's the Big Boss Man go in? And there's no,
who says?
Yeah. There's none of these top guys that are still missing, or you can't have a class be main event guy, main event guy, main event guy. You have to spread it out over time. And I know you got to be careful because guys they're getting older, they're in bad health, and you never know who you're going to lose, and it's better to have them there. But I'm excited about the addition of the Big Boss Man. I think he wasn't necessarily a top guy, but definitely deserving. A great character back in the day, and a hell of a worker.
He was Hall of Fame caliber for sure in his role. His role was never to be the top guy, but for what his job was, he always delivered the goods. And what a great human being he was. We had the good fortune to work with him on some of his last bookings before he passed away. And a great match somewhere in the ether that exists, folks. Get this. There is a match where Tank teams up with the Big Boss Man to take on Pomp and Circumstance. And what a hell of a fun night that was.
Yeah, I remember that was... for some reason, that company was running 2 shows that night, which was a daring thing to think of now. But I was on the opposite show, so I did not get to see that. But I heard about it, and it sounded very exciting. So definitely a big fan of him going in. Sting obviously speaks for himself. A great person going in. I hear Ric Flair is going to induct him, which is a good call. A lot of backlash about the Godfather going in, and I don't. I see people's point, but I don't think it's fair to almost say anyone that gets a chance to go in, almost to diminish that. If you were out there busting your butt and working on the road, and I mean, this guy he wasn't just a 2-year run as the Godfather. I mean, he had a lot of stuff before that. It may not all have been, first class stuff, but if you're out there busting your ass, who is any of us to say, well, this guy doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, let's look at him. He came up through the territories as the Soul Taker. And then he was Papa Shango and had a pretty big run there as a memorable character. It didn't last long. It didn't have a great impact, but people that were alive during that time definitely remember it.
Very underrated character, I think. When people shit on Papa Shango, I think they're mistaken. I think it was a good character.
And then he went on to be Kama, the Supreme Fighting Machine, and had a run on top there with The Undertaker for a little while. And then, of course, ultimately found his big niche, as many do, doing as little as possible as the Godfather. He found a way to be entertaining. In the Attitude Era, it was very edgy. A lot of people are a little miffed that a pimp character is being recognized as a Hall of Famer, but there's no denying that he was over. Every single person in the audience was chanting his catchphrases, talking about lighting the fatty for that pimp daddy and pimping ain't easy and all that stuff. So, yeah, man, congratulations to that guy.
Yeah, and you got to have a mix because there's going to be people at the Hall of Fame that aren't familiar with Freebirds at all.
Look, if motherfucking Coco Beware can be in the Hall of Fame, then the Godfather can be in the Hall of Fame.
Coco Beware, that's Tank's big one. He was furious about Coco Beware going to the Hall of Fame. How the fuck is Coco Beware going to be in the Hall of Fame and Manny Fernandez isn't?
Well, I see that point too. They've got to have people to put in the Hall of Fame in future years, so they can't do them all at once, obviously. But a couple of announcements that haven't been made official by WWE, but have been spoiled by the official Hall of Fame magazines. And I think actually Jackie Moore was announced this week. An innovator in females wrestling, a tough lady who's very instrumental in all that Attitude Era stuff in WCW and WWF. And then, of course, one of my all-time favorites, Stan the Lariat Hansen.
Yeah, I mean, those are two good, and especially for Texas, especially with Jackie Moore. I think those are great choices, especially now they don't have exactly a format, but they definitely seem to be doing like one man or one person who's no longer with us, and then they've been doing one diva a year, it seems like, for a little bit, and getting some local flavor for the town, and then just spreading it out a little bit. So I think Jackie Moore is a great addition, a great call. And Stan Hansen, of course, hands down, deserves to be there. I didn't know what their relationship was, but then when he came back to do an introduction just a couple years ago, I mean, right then I said, well, he's got to go in soon, I think. So it's definitely a good class. Can't wait to watch that on the WWE Network for only $9.99, or you can just set up a new email account and get it for free.
All of the foolproof security measures that they go through there to make sure you don't keep signing up for the free month they give every fucking month, it seems, which makes me kind of feel like an asshole for paying $10, but whatever. At least I get it on the up and up, huh? But yeah, super excited for that Hall of Fame class. Very excited about the Freebirds, despite my comments. That's splitting hairs. I love the Fabulous Freebirds, all versions of them. Fortunate to befriend Terry Gordy in his late years, and then, of course, as you mentioned, later his son Ray. So excited for him, excited for everybody. That's just a really awesome moment for this whole area, because Terry Gordy's kind of like the mecca of wrestling in Chattanooga. Like, everybody fucking looks up to him, and he kind of is the symbol of the good old days around here. So that's really awesome.
I do want to armchair book one thing for Mania. I don't know how. I don't know how much time you give it. I don't care if it's on the pre-show. But what do you think that arena would do? I mean, even though there's a lot of new wrestling fans, a lot of casual fans, but WrestleMania is going to have hardcore fans as well. So if you got 100,000 people, 70,000 will probably be hardcore wrestling fans. What would happen if Michael Hayes is out there talking a little bit in the Hall of Fame segment or whatever, and he says, you people in Dallas ought to thank me. I made wrestling here, blah, blah, blah. And any Von Erich that you can find, because I know the second generation of Von Erichs are now wrestling, got in there and slapped that claw on Michael Hayes in the middle of the ring. Do you not think that would be an explosive reaction?
Oh, that would be the fucking greatest.
You gotta do that. I mean, I know it's not something that they would be all for now, but just in any way, shape, or form, if they had that moment, I have no doubt that the place would erupt, and that's what you want to see. You want to see fans reacting and having a good time and really being emotionally invested. And I think that's something that would be amazing to see. But I doubt we will. But that's one I would love to see on the pay-per-view.
Well, speaking of the celebration of wrestling, right before that, Tooth and Nail 5 is going to happen. And, of course, Empire announced they are closing their weekly location in Rossville, Georgia, after a great 5-year run. Going to take a little break over the summer and be back in the fall with an expansion effort that looks to go to multiple different towns, and there'll be less frequent Empire events, but they will be bigger events, I'm told. So it's an exciting time for the company, and in the meantime, they plan on keeping out there and keeping alive via social media and the massive video library that the editors really haven't had a chance to go through and get a lot of that stuff out there. So a lot of the great Empire matches you've heard about during this break time, you're going to get to see them. So that's really going to be an awesome initiative. But Tooth and Nail is going to be the big final blowout. You have to be there. Give us a quick rundown of the card as we go into the last 10 minutes of the program here.
Well, we're going to have obviously we're going to have a 30-minute pre-show, and I've seen samples and I've had some input on some of the video production, and we've always had top-notch video production. And this is going to be no different. It's going to blow things we've done before out of the water. Can't be missed. We're going to have a match on the pre-show with the 2015 Rookie of the Year, Chase Jordan, facing our senior official, Brandon Bailey, in his first ever professional wrestling match. He's been training for a while, and he just asked me, I just want to have one match in this building, and I couldn't deny it because he's worked so hard as a referee. A wrestler goes out there and competes in one, maybe two matches, but this guy's out there constantly, every week, refereeing 3-4 matches. There's been nights he's refereed every match on the card, so he's worked hard. So I think that's going to be a great moment, a great contest. Bobby Moore and Matt Fortune in a grudge match with Steve Dave basically turning his back on his longtime friend and client, Matt Fortune, the frickin' Star. So the hit for hire Bobby Moore, Steve Dave's new man. So that's going to be exciting. Johnny Viper has challenged the White Rose members that will not be getting their ass destroyed by me. Chip Day and the Double Dragons, Keith and KT Hamill, to a 6-man tag match. I told him he could bring any partners he could find. So it's going to be interesting to see what 2 men Johnny Viper get to back him in that war. A match I'm really excited about, I really hope I can catch, is a number 1 contendership for the Empire Heavyweight title. Because like you said, the goal is to continue. And so we need to prepare the show as if we are going to continue and line up a new challenger. And Ace Rockwell is going to face Tank. And these men have a storied history. You just mentioned that several years ago, Tank and the Big Boss Man versus Pomp and Circumstance of Ace Rockwell and Sean Tempers. So this match could steal the show, and I'll break news. I think the match will be so hot and so epic, and I want everyone competing to know that they got to step up and deliver the greatest show ever. Tank and Ace Rockwell will be the opening match of Tooth and Nail 5. That's a Midnight Black Mass exclusive. So if you don't want to miss the pre-show, but you certainly don't want to miss the start of the actual event, because that match could steal the show. Kyle Matthews versus Chris Gans for the Empire Junior Heavyweight title in a 30-minute Iron Man match. Only the second time we've had this type of contest in Empire. The first being the first ever, to my knowledge, Empire presented a tag team Iron Man match several years ago. So that's going to be exciting. If you know Kyle Matthews, you obviously know he can deliver the goods. But I think Chris Gans is, at this point, probably, in my opinion, the most underrated wrestler in the state of Georgia and in the Southeast. So I think he's looking to really show something at this event. As of last night, we've announced that Livewire Entertainment, Mr. Sports Entertainment, and Livewire Corey Cox will face the Hatriots in a tables match for the Empire Tag Team titles. First time in history, Empire presenting a tag team tables match. So that's can't miss. Lamar Phillips with his man, Lionel Lucas Lazarus, versus Baniac with his man, the Muji Bear. And if Baniac loses, they're going to shave the fur of the Muji Bear. But if Lamar Phillips loses, they're going to shave the head of Lionel Lucas Lazarus. And if you know Lionel Lucas Lazarus, you know he has a beautiful set of luscious, flowing, curly, fro-like locks. So I know who I want to win that one, but I'll stay unbiased, and we'll see what happens in 6 days. Rush and Drew Delight, dubbed the Shadows of the Empire, have been there since the doors opened, obviously. Face some of the up-and-coming talent. I don't even know if it's fair to say up-and-coming. I mean, these guys are bona fide stars at Empire now, and I think can be stars anywhere really in the country if they put their mind to it. Former Empire Heavyweight Champion Logan Alvey and Gunnar Miller, UTC's own, as we mentioned. If we can get him away from those sugar mocks, I think this is going to be a violent match. It's going to be no holds barred. And the Empire Heavyweight Championship main event, Bobby Hayes defending against the number 1 contender, Joey Lynch. So, I mean, 9 big matches all around, and then I hate to speak of the fight that I hope to have, because who knows if when I call him out if he'll even show up. But I don't want to make it seem like it takes precedent over these great matches, because it definitely does not. But I will go to the ring at Tooth and Nail 5. There will be no referee. There will be no wrestling boots, wrestling gear. There will be no flashy wrestling the things that we normally see for a wrestling match, because it isn't about that in any way, shape, or form. And I will call Ryan Vega out to the ring, and hopefully he will show up, and we're going to fight. And I cannot describe, as I said earlier in the program, how violent that I plan for this to be, because I don't know if I've ever actually hated someone in the wrestling business more than this man, because not only of his bad mouth and his poor attitude and his bitchiness and being that typical young guy in the wrestling business that you hear about that has no respect. It seems to me he has no self-respect. But what he's done to guys like Tank, to guys like Kyle Matthews, the White Rose, what they've done to Johnny Viper in recent rings, basically what they've done to the entire Empire roster. But then laying their hands on you, who is not and was never a trained wrestler, did not sign up to get involved in matches or in-ring competition. And, I mean, damn near, I mean, they could have taken you out. They could have, you could have had what happened to me. And trust me, having your jaw wired shut for 8 weeks, it's not fun. It was one of the most horrible experiences I've ever had. So with all those things piled up, and then last night, I was out there, I was trying to say basically a goodbye to the great Empire Wrestling fans. And all of a sudden from behind, I'm attacked by Ryan Vega and Keith Hamill. And I know you weren't there, but I'm sure you've heard that. I don't know how else to say it. They basically tried to commit a homicide. If anyone's familiar with the term waterboarding, they basically tried to drown me in the middle of the ring. I guess they did not intend to kill me, because they probably could have if they were a little more aggressive in the attack. But it was definitely a horrible experience, and I'm just being quite honest, it was probably the most afraid I've ever been in my life, because if anybody's out there ever come close to drowning, you know how terrifying that is. And when someone has you pinned down and is pouring gallon after gallon of water over your covered face, and you're gasping for every breath, and they let you go just long enough to catch your breath and kind of realize what's going on, and then repeat. It was terrifying, and it was completely over the line. But that's what these guys are. They're habitual line steppers. They cross the line any chance they get. So at Tooth and Nail 5, I think I'm going to cross the line. And I've told him to bring all of his buddies, all of the White Rose he can round up, because I won't be coming alone. And I've got a nagging suspicion that the friends I bring are going to be much, much more terrifying than the friends he brings.
Oh, Ryan Vega. Boy, you have shit in your cereal, and now you gonna take a big old bite at Tooth and Nail, March 19th. You've been in wrestling matches, but you have never been in a fight like the fight Andrew Alexander is going to bring to you. It's the end of an era, the end of 5 years of everything he's poured his blood, sweat, and tears, and many sleepless nights into, is the success of Empire Wrestling, and you've tried to jeopardize that. But guess what? A man with nothing ain't got nothing to lose. And on March 19th, Andrew Alexander is going to get a hold of you, and you're going to pray to your God, to your mama, to Santa Claus, and anybody else that might come and save you, and you will hear nothing. That's what I got to say about that.
I can't wait. 6 days away. Doors open at 7 p.m. Pre-show at 7:30. You absolutely can't miss this show. I guarantee that if you come to this show, you will be happy you did. And if you don't, you will be wishing you did for a long, long time to come. 22 Austin Avenue, Rossville, Georgia. Be there.
Find them on social media, EmpireWrestling.net, Facebook.com/Empire Wrestling, on Twitter at EmpirePW. That's where you can keep up with all the details. And so far as the fallout of Tooth and Nail, when you can get your tickets, where you've got to call, the directions to the arena, all the info is in there, all the hype packages. You definitely want to check them out. It is an event that you do not want to miss. You will regret it for the rest of your life. And that's all, folks. 1 hour, and we are out the door. Thank you for joining us on the Midnight Black Mass. Any final words, my friend?
Man, the next time we get together to celebrate, we'll be celebrating the end of an era, man. Empire possibly closing its doors forever. Hopefully not. But if it does, I think we had a hell of a run. We did some amazing things. We really... the area in which we live and have performed a lot of wrestling has had such a bad reputation when it comes to professional wrestling, and rightfully so. I couldn't agree more. It's been given so much bad professional wrestling over the past 20 to 30 years, and I honestly think that with everyone's help, Empire as a whole has erased that and just done a hell of a job at presenting a top-notch professional wrestling product. So I think the fans, I think, most of the performers and wrestlers that have come along through Empire, and I thank you. And so the next time we get together, it'll definitely be a whole different world we're living in.
That's right, and we'll go ahead and spoil the beans now. A huge Empire Wrestling retrospective coming up next week on the Midnight Black Mass. We'll look at the fallout of Tooth and Nail, as well as the history of the promotion, and we may even have a few special guests. So be sure to tune in next week here on the Potty Humor Network and BeyondRingside.com. Thank you for joining us. I am the Reverend for Andrew Alexander. Keep 1 foot in the gutter and 1 fist in the gold. And if you're the White Rose, put a foot in that ass. Good night. This has been a production of the Potty Humor Network. Find us online at youtube.com/pottyhumor or subscribe to us weekly and never miss an episode by searching Potty Humor on iTunes or Stitcher. Thank you for listening, and good night.